Hello everyone, welcome to Arizona Billwatch for another lively discussion of important and controversial bills. I am your host, Jose Borrajero. Thank you for watching. There is a lot going on at the Capitol these days, so stay tuned because we have a fantastic show for you today. But before we do that, some housekeeping items. Number one, we would love for you to watch the whole show from beginning to end. However, you may also fast forward to the bills of your choice by using the handy chart that we have placed down below. Secondly, if you like what you see, please make sure that you like, share, and subscribe. It means a lot to us. Third, it costs money to do what we do. So if you like what you see, you may contribute by going to our website, azpeopleslobbyist.com. So with all that out of the way, let's look at the first bill. House Bill HB 2080. Short title, Elections, Municipal Vacancies, Primary. This bill was introduced by Senator Hendricks, and it will be heard in the Senate Elections Committee on the 18th. We have talked about this a little bit before, and because there was a this bill, of course, all bills that we discuss at this point, we have already, most of them we have already at least touched on, because these are bills that survived the initial chamber. So now they're on the second chamber, so all the bills that we are considering now were considered before. So anyway, Archie, do you have an opinion on this or what?
I've always got opinions. They may not be good, but I've got an opinion. But I think this needs to go back to Representative Hendricks and let him do some cleaning up on this stuff. The amendment says, under 2A of this, it says that they're not elected until they take the oath of office. Well, if you get the majority of the votes, you're elected. You're not qualified to operate in the office until you take the oath of office, but two entirely different things. So to me, that's a problem. Then Amendment 3, if two or more are running for the same office, how can more than one of them get a majority of the votes? And if you look at that section, it provides that you may have two or more people getting a majority of the votes.
Right.
So I don't know how, you can have, you've only got 100 votes, and somebody's going to get 51 of them, and somebody's going to get 49. You
Right.
can't have two people getting 51% of the vote.
Right.
So
That was what I was thinking about with this, when I was reading this also. It wasn't making sense to me, all the reasons that you're stating.
yeah, I mean, it needs to go back and needs to be clarified. I mean,
Well, it clears the House 34 to 24.
well, what does that say for members of the House? Somebody's not reading the bills.
They're not reading the bills.
No, so I mean,
Yeah, well, we know that that's the case. So anyway, I have a question mark on it. I'm not sure that I want to oppose it or support it. I don't like the bill. I like the idea, kind of, because it does away with these, what is it called when where one candidate, if they don't get the majority, they go back and it's measured somehow. I forget the name of that scheme.
The rank,
Yeah, the ranked vote thing.
the ranked choice voting, yeah.
Yeah, this appears to be an answer to that, to prevent that from happening. But I don't see, what I'm seeing is that the medicine is not all that good. Even though the disease is worse, the medicine is not that much better.
Right.
I think that's what you guys are saying here.
Correct.
yeah, I just think it needs to go back to Mr. Hendricks, and he needs to read his own proposed bill and
Well, it will have to
straighten
go back to an awful lot of people because it passed already, and
Yeah, I know. But I mean, Jose, we've covered this a lot of times, The state legislature, they needs to have somebody on their legislative council that are actually attorneys reading these
Right.
bills and say, look, maybe this is not really quite up there.
Yeah.
You need to make some changes in it.
we have discussed this at length, and in fact, there was a recent article on that indicating that
They're not reading the,
They're not reading the bills, which we already knew. When you have 1,700 plus bills introduced, and then you have a mad rush sometimes to get bills out because they have to meet the deadline and so on, they're sloppy.
Right.
There's no question about it.
Sure, of course.
And so the only question is, how do we fix that? And it's above my pay grade, but I can still complain about it.
correct?
So,
Okay.
All right.
so we're all in agreement that it's
Not a-
not a terrible bill, but that needs fixing.
It needs fixing, yes.
House Bill HB 2332, short title, Traffic Vehicle Laws, Cities Prohibition. It's going to be heard in the Senate Transportation, Technology, and Missing Children Committee on the 18th, introduced by Representative Aguilar. It restricts a local authority from enacting or enforcing an ordinance or regulation prohibiting cruising. Why?
Why is this even important? Okay.
Well,
You know,
I'm sure Archie will have some reason why this is important.
oh, I do have a lot of reasons why it's important, you know.
well, tell us, please.
Well, the cruising part of it, I don't think the city or anybody else has any right to necessarily tell me when and where and how often and how long and how far I can drive my car. That should be limited strictly up to you know, whether or not I've got enough gasoline in my car.
And if you're waiting for somebody and you keep repeating the same because you're waiting for somebody, that's another thing for cruising.
No, well, but I mean, the portion about, you know, I think they should be able to maybe do something about the height of the bumper. You know, because that can create, you know, a health problem, it's safety problems. And I don't know, I just recently saw on television where they had, somebody had customized a vehicle and it was only about 2 inches off of the ground. Well, how are they gonna cross bump, you know, these bump strips? You know, I mean, you're driving through all of these
that's their
neighborhoods and they
problem.
have, well, but, you know, if I'm behind
If they're
them.
gonna be stupid enough to only put it 2 inches up, I mean,
Well, but if I'm behind them and I may not be thinking about that bump strip and them getting hung up on it, and I may rear end them and mess up my car. So, yeah, I think, you know,
Yeah,
I think there should be regulating a
the-
height limit, I think, on
Yeah,
the vehicle.
I agree that some of these vehicles that I see on the road are way up high, some of them. Some of these like 4x4 Jeeps and so on, pickup trucks. And then you have the others, the low riders as they call them. And they scrape. You can see sparks all the time when these guys are driving. And so, yeah, I can see that portion. But we don't have an option here. It's either the whole thing or nothing.
If I've got to do nothing, then I'm going to go for nothing.
Right,
okay,
and
right.
that's my default
So,
position.
I think all three of us are a no on this one.
Yeah.
I have seen these, you know, these off-road vehicles, and not really off-road. I mean, people just with their pickups and they jack them up where you got to have a step ladder in order to be able to
Yeah.
get into them. Well, that creates a problem if they're going around the corner. I mean, now their center of gravity is so high that it's easy for them to turn over.
Yeah, and if you think that those are trail worthy, I got another thing coming because in a real trail for real four-wheeling, you're gonna have a lot of terrain that's not even in these high.
But isn't that for the people themselves to take that responsibility on themselves?
Only if they don't turn over on me as they're going
Right.
around the corner. So,
Right.
no.
Okay,
Yes,
So
if
we're all no on this one.
yes,
if that's my option, I'm a definite no on that one. Yeah.
okay.
House Bill HB 2405. Short title, Voter Registrations Recorder Initiative Status. This bill would be heard in the Senate Elections Committee, introduced by Representative Gillette. And basically, the way I read this is that it's aimed at cleaning up voter rolls. And whether it does that well or not, I'm not sure. What do you think of that, Archie?
Well, I'm a little bit confused about this, and it deals with a portion of the bill that's really subject to the amendment. It's really, if you look at the county recorder, it says on paragraph E, the county recorder on or before May 1 of each year. Now, there is a bill pending this year which changes our primary elections
Right.
to, and I don't know if it's the third week in May or the second week in May. But see, this says on or before May 1 of each year. And so there's a time frame because we now, our primaries have been moved now to July the 30th, but we're still talking about, 60 days or more to give the time to put out this information. And if we move it up to the second or the third week of May, then the time frame there would have to be changed, it would seem to me. Stopping fraudulent voting, I think, is a great idea. I don't think we need to have fraudulent voting. But that provision of it, I think, creates a problem, and I think we need to look at that.
So again, we have a situation where one part of the bill is good, it does a good job, the other one is a little bit confusing.
It creates a confusion in another part of the bill, yeah,
Okay.
that isn't addressed.
Overall, I think that it probably is a good idea to pass it.
I don't disagree with that.
Okay.
So we're all yes on that one,
Yeah,
kind
we're
of.
all going to be yes on that one.
House Bill HB 2479, Missing, Abducted, Runaway Children. This bill will be heard in the Senate Transportation, Technology, and Missing Children Committee on the 18th, introduced by Representative Barbara Parker. And it revises various requirements related to what must be done by the Department of Child Safety when a child is found to be missing, abducted, or run away. And I have been following this because there have been at least 2, maybe more, hearings on the subject. It's a hot subject, or has been this year, and this reflects some of the resolution, or not official resolutions, but the recommendations arising from those hearings. So as far as I can see, this is a pretty good piece of legislation. But Gloria, do you have an opinion on that?
I think it's a good piece of legislation, but reading this, this is another convoluted bill with all of these times that you have to have these many days or that many days. And I mean, I think it's a good bill. Some of this that's written in here, I think, anyway, yeah, I think it's a good bill. It's just awful convoluted. And I'd like to know who's going to be monitoring all of this with the kids and the time frames given.
Well, if the Department of Children's Services come in to take over the duties of a parent, then they should be held to the level of what a parent would do. What we require of a parent in taking care of their children. So, if a parent can't take care of their children, then the state steps in and takes over and takes the child away from them.
And I
so
agree
who's
with
going to
that.
take over from the Department of Children's Services if they're not performing their duties, all right?
Right.
Now, I've got a couple of things here that, and if I look at paragraph C, they talk about appropriate law enforcement agent to determine if the situation meets Amber Alert criteria for silver alerts. Silver Alert applies to seniors.
Seniors, right.
So, what does a silver alert have to do with this? Now, the other thing that I've got is if I look over at paragraph N on that bill, it provides that if the Department of Children's Services is not doing their job, then the Joint Legislative Oversight Committee can hire a third party to come in and insist and ensure that the Department of Children's Services are doing their job. But you know what it doesn't provide? if they find that the Department of Children's Services is not doing its job, what's the penalty imposed? None. Right? Shouldn't there be a penalty for not doing something that the statute says you're supposed to do?
Isn't that a problem with a lot of the bills, though?
If we were to apply that test to every bill, I would say that probably a handful only would pass.
Yeah.
Well, that may not be such a bad idea. If you look at how many...
It would be a great idea. It would be a great idea if every bill that we have would have a penalty attached to it if the conditions are not met. And that is a good discussion to have some other time. What we're trying to do here is, given the environment that we have, okay, does this advance the cause? No, it's a good movement. Or is it a bad one? And in my book, this improves the situation as opposed to worsening it, even though we have an environment in which a lot of these laws that we change really don't make a whole lot of difference because there's no penalty attached to them. So, but overall, I think it's a good bill. If I were voting on this, I would vote yes.
Archie?
I don't disagree that the
Correct.
concept is a good bill, but I will get back to the very same position that if you realize that there is a problem and you're going to try to correct the problem, then identify all of the problems and correct all of the problems, not
Exactly.
just part of them, and
And
leave some of them to be corrected at a future date.
And I think
that's what this does.
that's part of what we're hoping, that the audience sees this and makes these recommendations and starts paying attention to the fact that these bills are not the best written and they don't solve the problem.
So, yeah. With that, let's pass the bill with the proviso that at some point in time, the author of this bill looks at it and says, maybe I better make some more corrections next year and put in a penalty. So, yeah.
Right.
Good.
Okay, so I guess we're all yes on this.
Right.
Reluctantly, yeah.
Reluctantly,
Reluctantly.
but yes. Senate Bill SB 1278. The new title for this, short title, is Legislative Vacancies Appointments. This bill did not start out being what it is. It is the subject of a strike everything amendment. So it may go unnoticed by a lot of people, but that's what it is. And it will be heard in the House Municipal Oversight and Elections Committee on the 20th, and it was introduced by Senator Mesnard, and it has a whole bunch of provisions in it. And Archie, you wanna say a few words about it?
We originally or previously covered a similar bill, but the prior bill dealt basically only with time limits. This bill is something entirely different. In my opinion, this is an absolute no. Do not, under any circumstances, approve this bill. And the reason that I say that is if you read this bill, it makes a requirement that the PCs out of the legislative district within a certain period of time, depending on whether or not the legislature is or is not in session, select 3 people to be submitted to the Board of Supervisors, and the Board of Supervisors then select one of those 3 to fill the vacancy. But if you look at this, it goes on to say that, well, if they don't do that, then the Board of Supervisors can select a committee to come up with those 3 names. And if those are not satisfactory, then the chairman of the state party can select 3 people, all right? Now, you're getting totally away from the voters in the district.
Yes.
And when you're getting away from the voters in the district, could the people in Vail, Arizona, select a legislator for Page, Arizona? No. But this bill would allow that to be done.
Well, wait a second. The only way that this bill would allow that is if the precinct commitment failed to do what they're supposed to do. And furthermore, if the Board of Supervisors fails to do what they're supposed to do. So this is a remedy, and the remedy makes sense. If those who are supposed to do this don't do it, it makes sense to have a committee to take up what needs to be done, because the alternative is to go for a month or two or whatever time without a legislator. And you see that, especially now where it's so close that, for example, if it happens to be a Republican, they can do absolutely nothing because they have only one vote advantage in both chambers. So if there's a vacancy, that vacancy needs to be filled immediately. So yes, it's not perfect, but what else would you do? Well, the only alternative would be what is happening now, that because of whatever reason, this can be we can have a situation where it takes forever to get a replacement, and that is not a good thing.
You point out to me, Jose, in this bill it says that committee that's appointed by the Board of Supervisors has to select a Republican or a Democrat if that's the vacancy that's created. It doesn't say that.
No, you don't have to, because this only refers to doing it. Elsewhere in the statute, it tells you that what you have to do is it has to be someone from the same political party. That's already established.
Yes, but understand also that when you get into a court of law, the last subject, the last speaking by the legislature controls the prior.
Right.
And this one doesn't control it. So, I mean, we've got a situation in which, one, you're taking the vote away from the people of the district. That's horrendous. And
You do not take it away. They forfeit it by not coming up with what it's supposed to do.
I totally disagree with that.
Okay, so
I totally
you don't
disagree.
like it, I like it. Gloria?
I'm in the middle because I'm not as versed as you two are in this, so.
Okay, so we'll leave it at
This
that.
this horrible bill.
But I'll go with Archie on this one. If it's a horrible bill, I don't know.
It's a wonderful bill.
Now you can go with him because it's a wonderful bill.
3, 2.
Senate Bill 1583, short title, School Admission Annual Parental Disclosure. This bill was introduced by
Wozniak.
Right, by Senator Wozniak, and it would be heard in the House Education Committee on the 19th. And we've talked about this subject before, and our conclusion, if I remember correctly back then, is that it was intended to strengthen the parents' Bill of Rights under ARS 1601 and 602. Am I correct in that, Archie? Is that
Well, I mean, I think to the extent that it provides for providing to the parent's Bill of Rights, that from that aspect, it's quite good. Because most parents are not aware that the state has enacted a parent's Bill of Rights and what their rights are under that parent's Bill of Rights. In my opinion, that this bill has some problems elsewhere, and that it says each year, each public school shall send out this information. All this is going to do is going to create, an extra expense and an extra burden on the school. Now, I can understand that if they change this where that as soon as the child enters the school system, then you have to provide this information to the parent, but only then do you have to provide a parent has certain obligations of their own to understand what the school system does. And to require me to tell you every year that you have the right to have go to a charter school or go to a private school or school your child at home. That's just a little bit overbroad from my standpoint. I think it's a good bill, except for that, and we need to change the fact that you don't have to do this every year. just whenever the child enters the school system.
There are two reasons why you did do it every year. Number one, there may be some changes that need to be disclosed, if there are changes. The second thing is that you may have new parents coming in. And rather than trying to determine who's the new parent, who hasn't seen this before and who has, it will be too difficult. Once you have a set of comments or whatever, it's a simple matter. These days, with electronic distribution, it doesn't take any effort to have this published.
Right.
And then the only time they have to worry about or involve any personnel in it would be when there are changes. So the way this is written, I think it makes perfectly good sense.
I'm for this bill, and I understand your side, and I understand your side too, and I go more with that. I think it probably is a better solution to send it out the information out every year.
Also,
to all people who are enrolled in the
a
school.
lot of parents have short memories.
Yes, that's true too. So anyway,
Well,
I'm for
if
this
you look
bill.
at paragraph A, nowhere in that paragraph A does it say that you can provide this information electronically. It says that you will provide them with a document. And normally a document at this day and age means a piece of paper.
No, this back in the Dark
Not when you
Ages.
have DocuSign.
Right.
that's
Back in
considered a
in the Dark Ages, yes, a document was only a piece of paper.
Right.
But right now, as a matter of fact, the name of most of what's going these days is a document.
Right.
So DOC, remember .doc? That stands for document. So anyway, we both. I think
All
we
three of us.
Yeah, all three of us are in favor of this.
I think so.
Senate Bill SCR 1036, Cities, Towns, Elections. This bill will be heard in the House Municipal Oversight and Elections Committee on the 20th, introduced by Senator Watzak. And basically what this bill is aimed at doing is to prohibit the terrible practice by some cities of electing all the members of the council on an at-large basis, as opposed to electing them from each district. And so it's a very good bill, very much needed. So, Gloria, what do you think?
I'd rather go to and hear what Archie has to say.
Archie, what do you have to
first.
say?
This is a stupid bill.
Thank you.
Why do you-
I like to see if you guys can change my mind. Go ahead.
Why do you need to amend the Constitution for this?
Well, with
All
that-
it takes is just a general bill. You don't need to amend the Constitution to provide for this. The idea, the concept, I have no problem with the concept, but my problem lies in you do not amend the Constitution, for this kind of thing. I mean, it's a stupid thing.
Right, and I have the same opinion. I don't like amending the Constitution by a simple majority of a mob. I've always been against that.
But you were saying that you thought that this
Yeah.
needed to be.
Yeah, and I think that this needs to be a constitutional amendment because I think, and I can stand corrected if I'm wrong, but I think that it is in the Constitution that these chartered cities can do whatever they want to. There's no restriction as to how they elect their people. So,
Well, I guess that's the question. Is it or is it not?
and I don't know the answer. Sorry, folks, I should have looked it up, but I don't know the answer. But either way, it needs to be changed. And the question is not so much whether it requires a constitutional amendment or it can be done by a simple statute. So we have to leave that open. But the concept, all three of us like the concept, correct?
Well, I like the concept. I just think amending the Constitution
Right, okay, okay.
to do this is a stupid
Right.
idea when it can be done by just
Yeah,
a
Gloria?
simple bill.
I agree with,
Okay.
right,
So we are kind of in agreement, just the system is what we don't like.
correct,
And we're not going to correct that now. So,
correct. Okay. Okay.
Senate Bill SCR 1041, short title, Ballot Measures, Challenges. This bill would be heard in the House Municipal Oversight and Elections Committee on the 20th, introduced by Senator Mesnard. And basically what it does is that it allows a person or an entity to question the constitutionality of an initiative or a referendum before it actually put to the voters. It avoids the situation where we enact something via initiative or referendum, and then there's a whole slew of challenges in its constitution and so on and so forth. So we resolve that question before we spend a lot of money with the election and trying to defend it or support it or oppose it and so on. So to me, it's a good thing. You should not put up to a vote something that's going to be unconstitutional down the line if you know ahead of time.
Correct.
So,
And-
what do you guys think?
And I'm in favor of this bill. And we had a discussion about this before. There was something we didn't like about the bill, but.
Yeah,
it
what we
looks-
didn't like about the bill is that it applied only to initiatives.
To initiative,
Right.
didn't apply to
And now
referendums.
it applies to both the initiative and the referendum.
And
So it doesn't matter whether, now there is a difference, folks, and I know Arch, you're probably going to disagree with this, but presumably, when something goes to the voters via the legislature, it has a better chance of being correct, not because the legislature is any better, but because you have to go through the committee process, and there's a whole process to go through. If you have an initiative, it's just anybody can just put up something and say, okay, if I have enough money, I make up something and I put it to the voters and I just get enough signatures. If I have enough money to hire enough people, I can get enough signatures to get it on the ballot. And that's not necessarily the case with the referendum by the legislature. But other than that, it's pretty much the same situation.
Archie?
Well, no, I agree with what he said, but, in rereading this, my initial reaction was that it was an amendment to the Constitution. Then I read it again, and I said, well, no, it's not. It's just passing of a regular bill. But if I go back and I read again the opening of paragraph 1, it says, Article 4, Part 1, Section 1, Constitution of Arizona is proposed to be amended as follows. So that
okay.
then makes this, when it's submitted
A
to the people,
consti-
it makes it a constitutional
Okay.
amendment.
Ooh,
That's what I thought, but
And
okay.
that totally changes. I mean, if it
Okay.
was not a constitutional amendment, I would say as a state bill, this was a good bill, and I would
Right.
be in favor of it. But if it's going to amend the Constitution, then no. I think, I disagree. I don't think we need amendment to the Constitution
okay.
to do that.
So, you don't like the bill? I do. Gloria?
I do. I agree with Archie on amending. I don't like that either, but I don't know. So,
No, I always look at the alternative. That's how I make up my mind as to what I like and I don't like. So it's either that or continue to have these situations where we put up something and we spend a whole lot of time and effort and money, and it gets either approved or not. If it gets approved, then there's going to be challenges and so on. I would much rather know ahead of time that it's not that it's not going to fly. So. In that sense, I'm still in favor of it.
Well, I think the concept is good. I just don't think we need to amend the Constitution to get there. I think a straight legislative bill is all we need.
it's right.
Well, 90% of or more of these amendments to the Constitution, I agree that they should not be amendments to the Constitution. They should be just a straight statute.
Right. Okay.
This brings to an end this week's edition of Arizona Bill Watch. Thank you for watching. If you like what you saw, please make sure you tell your friends, relatives, and anyone else you know. And make sure you tune in next week for another fantastic edition of Arizona Bill Watch.